Hey, I'm your host, Bree Wild, and this is Marquee Memories. Here we sit down with your favorite artist to talk about their top concert memories as fans. Today's guest is the frontman of a record-breaking, chart-topping rock band getting ready to release their 8th studio album, 8. Their Dance Kid Dance Tour is getting an Act 2, hitting 11 countries, spanning 54 dates. Brent Smith of Shinedown, welcome back.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I know, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Is this okay, crisscross, applesauce on your couch? I don't want to be a bad house guest.
However you're comfortable is good.
You look lovely, by the way. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you, too. I'm sorry that I banned you from talking about the ones you talked about in 2022.
I totally understand.
But, if we want to get back to those, we can. We can circle back to those for
Okay.
sure. First, though, so at the time of this interview, you released 5 of 18 tracks from the new album. Are you savoring the reaction to each piece released, or are you eager to have the whole thing out there?
I mean, I want the whole thing to be released, but I mean, there's always this interesting thing. This is 8 studio records. I think about the fact that it's also Safe and Sound is the 37th single that we've released as a band. So there is I don't necessarily would say there's like a new world order in how people release music, but this album in particular took a year and a half to make. So we've all in the band been living with these songs for a while. I'm so proud of it that I obviously just want to go ahead and I would have already put it out.
It was up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's a whole thing with Atlantic Records and, they're kind of a big deal. We've been with them a while. Yeah, they want certain things to be laid out a certain way.
Yeah. Do you think all the songs on this album will get a live debut at some point, or is that impossible given that this is your 8th album?
Do I think that they will eventually over time? Yes. Do I think that within 2026 will they all get a live debut? I can't guarantee that.
You already have so many setlist staples and hits.
You know what? But we try to do the best that we can. I mean, most of the time when we're doing a headline show now at the level we're at this particular stage in our career, it's roughly 22 songs. That's about a 2-hour show. You start getting into 2.5 hours, 3 hours, unless that's like an evening with, it's a little bit harder to do that, especially if you have 2 or 3 opening acts or what have you. But we try to interchange this show. That was one of the reasons why we released 4 singles last year to kind of start giving people an idea of what we were doing. And then we built this entire show, and now we're bringing that show into the markets, into the countries that we didn't play. But I mean, it's kind of, for us, we're always changing the way that the set looks and the set list. Zach has a lot to do with the set list. But we did a lot of deep cuts on the last run last year, stuff that we hadn't done in a long time. But I think it's going to be, this time around, I think it's going to be more like all killer, no filler.
Yeah, cool. What kind of set list would you prefer to do?
I mean, it depends on, one of the things, because we're playing countries that we haven't been back to in a while, like we're doing Australia for the first time in 16 years,
Nice.
Never played New Zealand before, so that's in September. It's been way too long since we've been back to Central Europe and the UK. We played the UK last year. We did Download. We haven't been back to Canada in quite some time. So those areas where we've not been back to in, say, like 6 years, 7 years, I think they're just going to be more open-minded to whatever we want to play. But, I mean, you can sometimes you can kind of geo-target like what people are streaming and, the things that are on the radio and things of that nature to kind of get an overview. You're never going to make everybody happy. So you try to just give them enough of the essentials and then enough of the new material, even the new material that they kind of already know. But every once in a while, you'll throw a curveball at them.
I remember when you were here for the other show, I was like, why haven't you been to Australia? But now you're going to Australia.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's extremely expensive. And we don't want to bring, look, we're not going to
bring the whole...
No, we are.
Oh, you
That's
are?
the whole point. Yeah, we're not going to...
That's why it's
Yeah,
expensive.
we're not bringing... It's not park cans and a backdrop. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like...
Go big or go home.
Well, part of it is, in the YouTube culture, which is global, they see a certain show and they're like, we want that show.
Yeah.
That show costs money. But that's why we signed up to do it. And, that's we know what we have to do and how we can offset those costs and what have you. But, a lot of times people will say, like, why haven't you been back or why have you never been to? When you break it down, being in a band, the currency, you have to really make every single penny count.
When you book Australia, are you like booking multiple shows, or like, how are we going to get the most out of being in Australia?
You know what? I actually wish we were staying a little bit longer. However, we're working with a company there called Destroy All Lines. That's a production team, and they're awesome. But they're like, the way they built it out for us, they're like, do it like this. Let's see how we get a read on everything. I have to say, though, the pre-order and the pre-sales in that territory right now it's actually pretty overwhelming. I think the on sale is in less than 24 hours for the whole thing. But you never know, especially when you haven't been back in over a decade, and in some locations you've never been to. Like, we played our very first time in Mexico last year. Never been. First time we played there, we played in front of about 14,000 people. So it's a very interesting dynamic when you're going to a country that either you haven't been to, or, you know, it's been a while since you've been back, but you got to bring your A game. So it's, you just find a way to make it happen. But you also have to remember, you got one shot at this, at least your return.
Yeah.
Give them what they like, blow them away, man. Like, it's expensive for them to go out on a night. They got to get a babysitter. They got to, you know, make schedules. They concert tickets are extremely expensive everywhere. So they may have to make the decision, like, you know, how many shows am I going to go to this year? So you have to think about those things when you're showing up, what they've had to do in order to be there. So you got to give them the night of their life. Agreed. So they'll come back.
Yes. Like, even if it takes you a long time to come back, they'll come back. Yeah. Well, amazing. Let's get into this mega memory that you have. First of all,
4 of them.
You did 4 Jingle Balls.
And we were very stoked because there were some people on those that I was like, I'm actually going to get to see these people play live. Alex Warren, Jingle Ball, Dallas, 2025. That's the first time I met Alex Warren, who is one of the coolest cats on the planet. You know, just a juggernaut, like, life-changing and career-changing as far as the records that he broke on the top 40 markets, not only in North America, but just in general. That Ordinary song, you know, but like his set list too, he's only got so much time.
Yeah. Jingle Ball sets are pretty...
Yeah, like, you know, we ended up, I think we had 4 songs or 5 songs that we played. But, you know, watching Alex was... I don't get a chance to watch younger artists, and I don't really get a chance to watch artists as much as I would like to, because I don't go to shows as often because I'm usually out doing shows. Yeah, I was just like, bring it on. This is awesome. Zara Larsson, Jingle Ball, Detroit, 2025. Zara Larsson, or Zara, I got to meet her, and she was just absolutely lovely. And then she just walked up there and owned it, you know, and it's super fun how she did everything.
Did you know about Zara ahead of time?
I didn't know a lot about that. Our guitar player, his tech, Drew, his son is like a huge fan. So I kind of found out about it from that, but then I got to meet her, and then just watching all of her viral moments and everything. And if you watch the, you know, her dance moves were quite everywhere on the internet, but I just loved how like fun she was about everything, you know. And yeah, it's different, you know. She comes from a different
Swedish,
place,
right?
Yeah,
Swedish.
Dance world, you know, top 40, but you know, again, just also too, like when you meet someone and you're just kind of finding out about their music, you get a vibe from them. She's just a really sweet, genuine person, and the music is just really fun. And then Nelly is just a legend. Nelly, Jingle Ball, DC 2025. And there are a lot of different people, but the 3 of them I got to see multiple nights, and we were on the same shows with them, and it was just a blast and it was very eclectic.
Yeah, that's an eclectic mix. Would you say you were fans of all of them before?
I started to be a little bit more knowledgeable. I mean, I was always knowledgeable about Nelly, but with Zara and Alex, you know, Shinedown is everyone's band. And over the last couple of years with the song A Symptom of Being Human, when we were crossing formats from rock and alternative over into hot AC, top 40, alternative, and what have you. And then taking that, you know, with 365 and what we did with that, like you start branching out because, you know, look, streaming gets your music played, but for us, radio will give you a career because we just know it firsthand. So when we started crossing over some of our songs into other formats, I mean, we're rock and roll to the bone, but you start to become you acknowledge because you're
Who
on
is
this different chart.
Yeah, like who isn't?
And you realize like, wow, man, there is some really, really dope stuff going on right now that I wasn't necessarily aware of. Not to mention like the grind of that as well. Like when I think about the time that I got with Alex Warren, like it's really interesting to hear his story about how Ordinary broke and how he was able to do that and how like he was just posting, you know, post after post after post after post on TikTok to get this song to go. And, you know, it was right, I think, and I might be messing some of this up, but like I remember him saying TikTok, they like, you know, shut it down and then it popped back up and then he just started hitting it again and all of a sudden it took off. But it was like hundreds of like posts of this song to get it to move. And it's very interesting to see it from that standpoint because he's coming from a place of like, okay, here's a couple of the songs that I'm doing. I'm trying to get these to move. And then we're on the same label. And we've been on Atlantic Records for over 20 years. But, you know, listening to him talk about how they didn't necessarily, the record label wasn't 100% about Ordinary, but Alex the entire time was like, no, it's this. I know it's this. And he just stuck with it. But he utilized, you know, social media to make it move. And then it ended up breaking every single top 40 record that's been held for like the last 20 plus years. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. That's really
Smart
cool.
guy. Great song too.
So when it was announced that like, oh, you're part of the Jingle Ball, like these were the artists you were most excited to see, or were you kind of surprised by them?
Well, I was excited to see us on the bill. And that was the other thing too, because that was like what was fun for us was like, I love the fact that, you know, once again, you know, talking about radio, but iHeart really embraced the band, you know, a lot of the companies at terrestrial radio and broadcast radio have as well. But, you know, they had to kind of take a chance, too, on this because it's a much more different type of an event than you would see, you know, a rock band.
Yeah.
But it couldn't have been more seamless because music is universal. And I've always said Shinedown is everyone's band. Like the reaction that we got from everybody, as soon as the fire hit, everybody was like into it. So, but no, it's, you know, you're out front of, you know, really an audience that's much younger. But at the same time, if you go to a Shinedown show, it's 8 to 80.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was excited about the fact that we were able to be that, you know, iHeart took the opportunity and the shot and the chance to be like, why shouldn't they be on this?
That's awesome.
Which was really cool.
I also read that you guys, you played Madison Square Garden last
Yep.
year for the first time. How's that?
Played Kia Forum too last year. First time ever.
Breaking records.
Trying to, man. Yeah, my mom was I lost my mother at the beginning of this year, and she's always with me. But one of the things that we were able to do together as a family that I'm so happy about is that she was able to come up and see Madison Square Garden.
That's amazing.
Which was awesome.
That's a good memory.
So Madison Square Garden, like, and the other thing too is all of the parents met each other for the first time in the band, which was kind of wild that we all hadn't been in the same place before, like that. But that was super endearing, and that was the one time where our backstage was like crazy.
You're like, I need everybody else's spots today.
It was no, it felt good. There was like so much. There was just I think Madison Square Garden has an energy, you know, either way. So did the Kia Forum. Kia Forum was awesome.
Did you get a special cake?
They did give us a cake. They were the sweetest, like the group of the people, you know, and I think we went, because you get on the wall, the big red wall and what have you. We were right underneath Sabrina Carpenter, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
But yeah, you know, you think about these coast to coast, you know, between Los Angeles and New York City and what have you, but we look at them all the same way. Like, you know, Iowa's got 15,000 capacity arena. New York's got 15,000 capacity arena. Like it's whether or not you can bring them into the building. You know, we sold Madison Square Garden out, which I still was kind of like taken aback by, but I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And it was a family show.
It was. It's PG-13. Yeah. I don't know what Zach's going to say.
Mom, cover your ears.
Yeah, I know what I'm going to say. I don't know what the rest of them are going to say.
You have a festival coming up.
Yeah, Lunatic Luau.
Tell me how that
Or Lunatic Ball. Sorry. Lunatic Luau is in Virginia Beach, and it's a badass festival, but I can't take any credit for that because I think that's in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
Lunatic Ball. From one of the lyrics in A Symptom of Being Human. But yeah, it's in Florida. First time we've ever done it. This is Zach Meyer's brainchild.
Okay.
This is all him.
Okay.
But as soon as they said in Living Color, or Living Color is going to play it, I was like, let's go. Like I'm in. And then, Zach has known the guys, and so have I, in Hanson. I know a lot of people are like, what? But they're friends of ours. And Flyleaf, Lacey's going to come in and do some stuff with us there too. But we also have, like, our comedian friends are coming in
That's
to
cool.
hang out. There's podcasting going on during the whole event. There's different tiers. I think it's all sold out though now, which is pretty crazy for it to be all the tiers to be gone.
Yeah.
And it's not even until October. But there was a lot of thought put into it. I think the company that we were working with, again, this is on Zach. This was something that he really wanted to try and see if we could pull off, because you want the experience for the audience and for the fan base, because it's expensive,
For sure.
So we have to make sure that it's of the caliber that we want it to be and what we expect. And, we want to make sure that the audience is really, really getting the most amazing experience possible. But I think they're going to have a blast.
Nice. October. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I know you said I said we weren't allowed to talk about the other shows, but
You can talk about whatever you want.
I want to touch on those because, they were very sound buddy,
Okay.
So you told me about Korn.
Yep.
A Korn show, Garth Brooks, and Tool and the Melvins.
Yeah.
Would you still count those among some of the most formative shows for you? Or
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the very first show I ever went to was the Beach Boys at the Thompson Bowling Arena, which we're playing on this tour.
Oh, nice.
It's in my hometown in Knoxville, Tennessee. But, I also think about, when I think about Korn, I also think about the Deftones. And, I remember the Deftones playing a place in Knoxville called the Mercury Theater that could barely cram in 300 people, but it was on the Adrenaline album. And when they played that building, there was like 2,000 people outside of the club. They had the doors open and windows and all that. I just remember the chaos that was like back in the day. But like, these are shows that I was like really young. And I remember also too, if I have to there's a certain, I guess, when I think of singers that I put at such a high, like my teachers, if you will, Chris Cornell and Otis Redding are definitely at the top. And then I would put, Billie Holiday and probably Ella Fitzgerald up there as well. But I think about the fact that, like, Chris Cornell did a record called Euphoria Morning that doesn't get as much praise as it should. It was his first solo record. And I saw him in a 500 capacity club in Nashville, Tennessee, like elbow to elbow. And it was like life-changing. But I also remember Lollapalooza seeing Soundgarden for the first time. And that bill that year, like, Metallica was headlining, but it went the Ramones, Rage Against the Machine, Soundgarden, Metallica. And like, I remember like just that whole experience I'll tell you this, I remember I was at the top of this hill because it was in Newport. Rage Against the Machine had just come on, and it was just a dust bowl of fury. Like when they came on, it hadn't been anything like that all day long. But what registered in my mind at the top of this hill was I was like, I'm going to have to run through that in order to get to the rail, because there was no way I wasn't going to get to the rail for Soundgarden. And I did, and I got to the rail. I sang that set with Chris Cornell, like note for note, just in the audience. And I remember like when they did Jesus Christ Pose, like the sky turned black, and like
you're like, how did you get the weather to cooperate?
I mean, it was wild. Like I go off and think about all these different. I saw some really life-changing for me performances from some artists that they're no longer with us. Which is also something that you have to keep that spirit in you. But as the years have gone by, I've gone to shows less and less because we're always like putting our stuff on and trying to figure out what's next for us. But it's actually something my son, who turned 18 in December, from the time he was 16 to, where he is now, he started to learn guitar in the last like 16 months. And I never put any of this on him when he was growing up. And because I wanted him to have a childhood and be what he wanted to be. And now he's so into a lot of the music that came from like the late 90s and early 2000s. Like he's a massive System of a Down fan. He's a big fan of Metallica, obviously, as something that he's learning, which is unique to watch because he's doing that all on his own, which is pretty cool. But to see him like just kind of the new metal that was a thing back in the day in the early 2000s, like his generation seems to really be gravitating towards that. We all kind of knew it at the time, even though it got messed with a little bit in media, but it's like, that style, that angst and that fury is a very real part of that music. That's why I think teenagers relate to it.
Yeah, for sure. So you didn't attempt to like get him into music at all,
Nope.
but he found it on his own anyway?
On his own. Very first song he learned how to play was A Symptom of Being Human on guitar. He sends me a video and he's got a guitar. I'm like, what is this?
Where did he get that guitar?
No, because it's he had a basketball in his hand since he was 6 years old. Okay. And like he was kind of, that was his mindset. He was he had scouts like starting to come, and he just, told me and his mom just like, I don't want to make you guys upset, but I'm just not into it anymore. Oh. And I was like, cool.
Yeah, whatever works
but
for you.
the thing about me, because me and his mom were never together, but we co-parented really, really well. Part of the sacrifice, is that I was gone a lot. And it's interesting though, but I always made sure that financially that they were secure, and there's a sacrifice inside of that. So my whole thing was like, I want him to grow up and I want him to do what he's into, not from my agenda, not that I had one, but like even when I would come in, his mom was actually pretty protective of me. Where, the parents kind of knew, but they were respectful about it and what have you. I think there were a couple of times where I probably came in and she kind of had to pull some parents off to the side at certain points. And
Be cool.
Yeah, like this is not a meet and greet. He's here to see his son. Yeah. No, but they were always really, really sweet about it and what have you. But the point being, I wanted him to, wherever his trajectory was, whatever path he wanted to go down, that was on him. I would be there to guide him in any way that I could. But it's pretty amazing getting a video, and I would always get videos from him. We always talk and what have you, but he's got a guitar and I'm like, what is this? And I hit it and he's like playing the song, but he's like actually playing it. And then I find out from his mother, like he, when he got a car and everything, he turned 16, like he went to Guitar Center and got it on his own and kind of learned it on his own. And it just took this different kind of path. What he can play 16 months into playing guitar, like my own guitar player is like, that's crazy, man, that he knows how to do this stuff now.
So you might have a little bit of talent there.
Yeah,
huh?
it's pretty wild to watch because he didn't go after like song structure in songs either. He wanted to learn the solos and some like very first solo he wanted to learn was both parts, Kirk's parts and James's parts in Master of Puppets. Like he wanted the solo, and he like within a couple of weeks like got it. It's very like
very high goal.
Yeah, and now he's like on all these Megadeth solos, and he just figured out. He just sent me the other night. He just sent me Crazy Train, Randy Rhoads solo with Ozzy. I'm like, what is this? Where is this coming from? He'll send Zach videos, and Zach's like, I can't play this.
Has he been to many Shinedown shows?
He was on tour with me last year.
Nice.
I put him on stage in Milwaukee in front of 10,000 people. He played Second Chance with us.
Did you like it?
He loved it. Yeah.
So maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah.
He's very like, I just love that he's a free spirit about it all.
Yeah,
he's just very like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Yeah. Who are his favorite bands? What do you say?
He freaking loves Tom Morello. Like, I mean, he's a big Tom Morello fan, just Rage Against the Machine and all of Tom's work, honestly. He's starting to Metallica, System of a Down, like I said, Deftones, Paradox Band. He's really, really into them. He loves Blink-182. Korn. He's kind of he's in that kind of era right now. I mean, that seems to be the thing that he kind of gravitates towards. Yeah, he loves rock and roll.
Nice. You're a little bit happy about that, right?
Of course. Yeah.
A little bit.
Well, rock and roll is I mean, look, man, when NWA was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which they 1,000% belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Ice Cube got up there and said rock and roll is the spirit, and that's really what it is. Like, it's not so much a genre of music. Rock and roll is a way of life, I think, for a lot of people. And in that community, at least from what I know, anyone from anywhere is welcomed at any time. So I think that it's more of like the way that you view the world and being open-minded and pushing the envelope and, pushing back against boundaries and things of that nature and kind of going above and beyond what you think you're capable of doing. So I think there's an attitude. I mean, Miles Davis once said, if you're going to play a song, play it with some attitude. So I guess that's the way I think he gravitates, my son anyway, gravitates towards that attitude, of the rock and roll attitude is, rock and roll, man, you could be down in the dumps or just not in a good mood or just kind of feeling not great about yourself or what have you. And the right song comes on at the right time and all of a sudden you're back in it. It just builds your confidence back up.
So what is this next? What is the 8 era about for Shinedown? How would you describe it? What do you think it's going to be? I guess it hasn't started yet, but
yeah, well, no, it's started. We have some great people around us, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the 4 of us. We're the ones in the band, and there's things that we haven't accomplished that we want to accomplish. There's places on this planet that we haven't been to that we want to go to, and regardless of whether or not we're making money or what have you. That doesn't mean anything to us, really. Yeah, we understand that you need money to survive and things of that nature, but we're looking for more of the experience and how do we connect with the population on the actual planet. So I think for us, 8 is about exploration and about no boundaries and, because you have a catalog too, these other albums, these other songs. I think that was one of the reasons why we took so much time. We weren't desensitized in the studio when we were making this record. It took a long time. The whole process was, over a year and a half. And so when you start working on something like that, that was part of the reason why we started to give people, I don't even want to say a taste. We kind of opened the door of what this was going to be last year.
Yeah.
And then everybody was kind of, well, you can't just release singles. I'm like, there's a bigger body of work and we can kind of do whatever we want. I don't think there's any rules anymore in the way of how you release music.
You can
especially
drop a whole album overnight. There's no rules.
And so I think more than anything, the number one thing for this record is exploration. And then also just, the last 2 records were conceptual. This is a more traditional record in the fact that all these songs belong on the same body of work, but they're not related to one another. So they all tell a different story. And I think there's something for everybody. I truly think there's something for everybody on this record. It kind of goes all over. It's very much it's quite an emotional roller coaster, but it's balanced. And I love that about it. You're getting everything from the band that I personally feel, because I often will tell people something, even if you're not in a band, but you're a musician or you're a songwriter or, you're a performer, you do need to be into what you do. At least that's my opinion. Because sometimes people will be, and I get it, they could be a little nervous about it or what have you, but I'll be asked the question, well, what do you do when somebody plays your song, or if you're in a store and you hear it, or you're in the car and it comes on? Do you turn it off? I'm like, no, I turn it up.
Yeah. Right?
I'm proud of it. That's why I recorded it.
For sure. For sure.
So I think this record we really thought very, very broad. I think there's something for everybody on the album. That's why there's 18 songs. It's essentially a double record.
Nice.
And it's more about exploration. Hopefully this album will be the sounding board to us getting to all those countries that we haven't been able to get to.
What are some of those on your wish list?
I really want to go to India. I really want to get back to Asia. We've only been a couple of times, and they were short times that we were there. Obviously, Down Under. I've been waiting to get back for a long time. South America, we've only been one time, and I kind of look at it as a do-over because we only did 2 shows, and it was a train wreck when we went, just because it was we were on in 3:00 in the afternoon, and it was just not great. So we've always kind of said South America is a do-over. Which we're working on right now. And then, just areas that you wouldn't necessarily think about, it'd be amazing to go to China, my goal is to play on this album cycle too, is to do all 7 continents.
That'd be cool.
Including Antarctica. I know everyone's like,
that one's always rough.
Yeah. Metallica can figure it out. We can figure it out.
There you go.
But it's just, there's a lot of places. Also too, just getting back to Central Europe and getting into places that we just haven't been to in a long time. Mexico, again, people are kind of stunned when I say that we did Mexico for the first time last year. They're like, what? But when you are playing the U.S. a lot and even Canada, it's been a minute since we've been back there. So I'm glad this first and second leg that we've got coming up. You want to try to be smart about it, but I think there's like something roughly like over 270 flags. It's a big world.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to get to. Can you tell us about any of the other songs that haven't been released that you're really excited for?
I can tell you that there's a song called So Glad That You Asked. That's the first Smith-Bass duet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for some people that may not know this about the band, so Eric Bass, that is his actual last name, and he does play bass. He's a fantastic bass player, but that's not all that he is. So the last 3 records have been engineered, mixed, and produced by Eric in-house. So it's very rare to be in a band that has a band member that has that kind of a skill set, because he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's got an incredible voice. He's a fantastic songwriter, but he's a phenomenal engineer. And just, again, it's rare to have somebody with, that can be multifaceted like that. But so like on the record, yeah, it was interesting because like we had that song laid out, and then I remember the day that he had a run earlier in the morning, and I got to the studio. I thought I was singing another part on the song, and he was like, so I did something. I just want you to listen to it. I listened to it, and then I hear the part when he comes in that it wasn't there before, and like every hair on my body stood up, and I was like, this is amazing. I was like, cool, I'm gonna set the mic up, and then we'll just do it line by. I'm like, nope, that's all you, dog. And he's like, no, Brent, nobody's gonna want to hear me. He's like, I want to hear you, because like.
It.
Yeah, and I think the other reason why it hit me the way that it did is because he wasn't thinking about it. He was just doing it, and it sounded great. So that's been really, really fun. I think, from an alternative, kind of sound, there's a song called Young Again that I think is going to surprise people. There's a song on the album called Dizzy that I think that people are going to be taken aback by, because we wanted to write the biggest anthem about, and it doesn't even have to be your love interest per se, like your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. It can just be it's an anthem about your ultimate ride or die, like your best friend in the world. Essentially, it's like, I wanted to write an anthem about like your bestie. You know what I mean?
Good. I think there needs to be more of those.
Yeah. And Dizzy is without question like that song, at least for me. It's, the way that I approached it and the way that we looked at it is like, there's not a song that's like an anthem for like your bestie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what that is. The other stuff on the record, I think the pilot is really gonna hit people in a very unique way. It's the closer on the album. It's interesting too, the people that have heard the record, some of these people are very trusted with, what we do. When they've heard it, they're like, this might be the most, I'm trying to think of the way they've said it to me. They're like, this is without question the easiest, like, digestible sequence we've ever heard you do. Like, all of this sounds so natural the way that one song comes after the other, because it does take you on this ride, but also, that there's 18 songs, but the whole record's an hour and 4 minutes. And they're like, when you finish, you start with a song called At the Bottom, which is very Broadway, because Eric grew up, his mom was a vocal instructor and a piano teacher, and he was, with sisters, and they were always doing show tunes in Broadway. So like, it's got this very, it's the only way that it was going to make the record, and it was always going to make the record, but it's the opener. But, as you go into all of this album, it really does kind of set you on a course. It's quite an adventure, but you find yourself, at least from the people that we've talked to that we trust, they're like, man, it's over before you know it, and all you want to do is just listen to it again, which I take that, as a good thing.
How much time did you guys spend putting everything in order? Was that a big part of the process?
Yeah, so the sequence is a big deal. And look, we all know how people consume music now, but like, we don't write songs to be singles, we write albums. And, Zach's always had a good way of putting it. Zach and Barry, they've always said like an album is a snapshot of that artist at that time. when people get it, it can be whatever they need it to be for them. Like it's subjective, so you don't necessarily, want you don't want to tell somebody what it is.
Yeah.
You want
to them.
because it's going to mean something different. But the sequence is really important. This was probably, without a doubt, the easiest one to sequence. It kind of sequenced itself. My favorite part is when we go see an incredible individual by the name of Ted Jensen. People don't know who Ted Jensen is. He is the greatest mastering engineer on the planet. He's mastered every record of ours except for the first one. Howie Weinberg did the first album, and he did a fantastic job. He's awesome as well. But Ted is kind of like family with the band. The mastering is like, that's, again, that's the completion. It's not that it's the finisher per se, or but he is, he's the last part of the delivery system to the world. So part of that is like making all these songs sound cohesive together, and taking the mix and then finding out, the volume levels of everything, how it can, how it transitions and that it makes it feel cohesive. I think we had 3 sequences, but we went back to the first original one. We had to tweak a couple of things, but it was a pretty natural sequence. It wasn't hard to sequence the record, but it's very important.
Nice. Well, you're going to be like really busy touring, but are there any shows?
Modestly touring. That's the thing. Like, I look at it and people are like, when you break it down, it's like, yeah, and there's some stuff that's not been announced just yet, but like, there's probably 65, 70 shows like in all that will be, but like, it's not 200 shows,
fair.
Back in the day. The other thing too is what's interesting about that is it's kind of funny because me and Eric were talking about this the other day, and Eric was like, I'm 51 years old. I don't feel 51 years old, but you'll talk about like, you'll look 10 years ago at pictures or even 15 years ago. When you're starting out, you'll just play anywhere you can. You know what I mean? It's just like anytime, anywhere, like 2 shows a day, why not? But as you get older too, and then you start to look at these really big shows and what have you, it's different if you do like a club tour or a theater run, or it's an erector set. That's the way we look at it. So we have an A rig, a B rig, and a C rig. So like you can, slow boat some stuff. If you got to do sea containers and fly them to different places, you can do that. But you want to be really meticulous about the shows that you say yes to, especially if you're in a headlining position and that's what you're going to be doing. So, man, if you're doing 150 shows a year, are you giving everybody your absolute best on that? Because, like, it's all good, but you want to make sure. That was one of the hardest things as we were getting older, was just maintaining, because we all take care of ourselves, but my whole thing is, like, I can't plug my instrument up. So I have to, your body is your temple. So it's all, like, and, the guys in the band, even, Barry has said this. He was just like, I can have 103 temperature. I've done it before and play drums.
Yeah.
He's like, if Brent or and Eric sings like 70% of the set with me. Eric's playing multiple guitars and bass and piano. Zach's doing the same stuff, but like, you have to be aware of like what your physical prowess is and what your expectations are. And, you looking at a schedule and seeing 365 days and just saying yes to everything isn't that responsible.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to cancel, and you want to make sure that every audience gets to the best of your ability. You can't help it if you do get sick. You just got to figure out a way to, okay, I'm sick, but can I still perform? And not that you kind of put that agenda. You always want to, be strong and have that confidence going forward. But I will say that for bands that are starting out or even in their like mid 30s, like, just be selective of, you want to get out there and get in front of people. But remember, you have a responsibility to make sure you're healthy so that you're not having to cancel shows and you're there for the audience and you're able to give them, 100% of your best. So that's kind of why it's like, it was fun back in the day doing 150 shows a year, but I was younger and, I was...
That's not the vibe anymore.
I just wanted to make sure that... The other thing too is like, I do want to get to that place where we can do 2.5 hours, 3 hours, but not everybody can do that. You have to condition yourself to do that.
Yeah. So how to put on a good show, and
I
you know
think
how
I
many
do.
days in between and how to.
I think I do. I think we do. It's not it's our band. So
Yeah.
I think we just never stop learning. Like we're always like looking, and that's one thing I'll say too. I'm in a band with such creative individuals and very steadfast and hard-headed at times, but will give you everything, and they're always paying attention to their surroundings. They're always looking at the peripheral. They don't have tunnel vision. One thing I'll say about Zach is like he is the one in the band that is at shows and is kind of a bit of a social butterfly and is moving around and doing things because he's learning, and he's just a fan of that. So he's always bringing to the table, I saw this and I saw this. I like this from this. I see what they did here, but it would have been cooler if they did this. But we can do like so. You know, that's the fun thing about being in a band. Like you don't have to feel like you're all on your own.
Yeah.
You gotta, you got a gang.
Yeah.
And they're all there to help each other.
Yeah. Part of my question was that, are you planning on attending any shows as a fan? I know you don't get.
Oh my God, I'd love to. You got any coming up that I know about, that I should know about?
Where are you based these days?
So I live in hotels. I had a house in California from 2010 to 2016.
Okay.
I haven't had a mortgage since 2016. So I just live in hotels, rent cars, but I bounce around a lot. LA, New York, Nashville. My son is in Florida. But yeah, I've been living in hotels since 2016.
And that works for you?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep. I'm kind of the one guy in the band that can move on a dime.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of like the stuff that I've seen announced that, man, I wish I could go see 9 Inch Nails, but I'm just nowhere near him on anything. Of all the shows I would like to see at the Sphere so far, obviously Metallica. Yeah. Although I will tell you, and I know this firsthand, because Zach, I think, went to 3 of them. Because Zach has seen, how many has he seen? Zach I think he saw U2. I'm pretty sure he went and saw U2 because they were the first. I know he's seen the Eagles. I know he's seen, I'm trying to remember but basically the one that he saw, he was like, I don't care what anybody says. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life was the Backstreet Boys. He was like, that show at the Sphere is out of control.
Amazing.
And everybody said that too. They were like, maybe you wouldn't believe it, but holy crap, that is the most incredible show ever.
I did see some videos of like everybody like sort of agreed to dress in white, and people, there's just like throngs of people who've all dressed the same and like got in the spirit for it. So like,
I think it was that main record that had the space theme.
Yeah, was it
Millennia or whatever that? Yeah, and I feel bad because
I don't actually know.
because AJ's also always been so great. But yeah, like everybody was like, holy crap. Whoever designed this with them or however they did this, and like their stage floated up and they did all this like sightline stuff but they were like, this was designed so perfect for, what this experience is supposed to be. Yeah. There were a couple of them that went up and some people were like, I don't know about this. But again too, it's a wild, I've not been in there. Zach's been in there multiple times. He's like, there's no way that you can get anywhere near the scope of how intense it is until you walk in there. Like you have this idea from like, if you see something on YouTube or whatever, like you have no idea. It's overwhelming when you walk in. And then when it actually begins, it's such a sensory, like, it's just fascinating how like your mind, it's almost like your brain doesn't know how to handle it all. So you got to go a couple of times because you're going to miss stuff. Yeah. And then you had like this matchbook stage where you don't even realize they're there. Like, and they're.
I think we need to have Zach on from my memories.
I know. Oh, you'd be in here for 3.5, 4 hours, as long as he could go.
He's like, I got a list.
He's seen everybody. He's probably watching someone tonight. He's always at a concert.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing these memories with us today and telling us about the new album. And I'm excited for your tour, and I'm sure you'll be back again sometime. Absolutely. And I appreciate, setlist.fm. All you guys and girls have been so awesome to the band. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate all your time. Thank you so much.